How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. Today, my special guest is Heston Alcorn from Oregon. How you doing, Heston?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
So he actually invited himself on my show.
It works. Try it out.
Yeah, it's great because you are a home grower. You're very passionate about cannabis. So you said you wanted to be on my show.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let me look at this guy. And I looked at it. You're super passionate. I haven't had really any home growers. And I feel like the majority of people that watch my show are home growers or, very passionate people about cannabis. And, I feel like you're super passionate just from looking at your page and talking to you. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I've been around it for a while and trying to, find my place in the cannabis scene these days. And that's kind of leaning towards the educational realm and home growers, very big population of home growers. I mean, every year there's new states coming online. So the amount of home growers in the country grows every day, every week. And people have, much more access to information than we did when we first started growing. In the 90s, I was afraid to go to the local library to look, at botany books because you're afraid the sheriff's department would come in and check the card catalog or something silly. So now with the amount of information out there and people have access to it all, it's kind of unfiltered avalanche, and people make these big purchases and uneducated decisions. And I feel like I took a shot to, we moved our family out to Oregon to try to do the OLCC commercial production and got our license in just before the moratorium, got caught up in that whole nonsense for a year and a half or so. We ended up having to sell our farm and kind of gave up back and forth. Oklahoma legalized. I'm from Oklahoma originally, so we took a couple of trips back and toyed with the idea of moving back and partnering in on a couple of grows. And it was
Oregon is way better for cultivation than Oklahoma.
Man, it was talking about Wild West. That's finally starting to settle down a bit out there, but it was kind of chaos. And yeah, got family, wife and kids, and kind of happy in my situation and finding that people are hungry for information and want to grow their own. And I think there's a big crowd of people that are really passionate as well about it. And that's, like you said, I appreciate that. And I feel very strongly and I have very opinionated sometimes about certain aspects of the process. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think I just want to share my passion and be able to let someone that's never grown a plant before have that experience of taking a seed, harvesting it, and then having a really nice product that they did themselves. That's a very satisfying experience, very rewarding. So
yeah, and it's an experience. I think those are great life experiences to see something that starts as a seed and then finishes as a usable product that you can smoke, or there's other uses as well. You can put it in an edible. You can do so many different things with it.
Definitely. Very versatile.
So, yeah, you can juice it. You can make ropes with it. It's like the sky is the limit. And I think it's just a really amazing thing that slowly but surely, as we get more technology, we start losing these things. Like butchery is a dying art too. You don't see real butchers very often like you used to. Every town used to have a butcher. Every place had actual butchers that would break down cattle. But a lot of, I would say that all grocery stores for the most part are just, not all, but the majority of them have actual just packaged meat.
Yeah, and it's cows go into one end of a building and packages come out the other and into a truck and shipped out.
Right.
Yeah, the butcher's cut out of that process now.
Well, yeah, and even vegetables. So many people used to grow their own vegetables or grow some of their own vegetables. And now most people, I would say more than 90%, just buy produce from the grocery store.
Definitely.
So, and I think there's some real enjoyment that you can get, and you can learn a lot about nature, and you can learn a lot about failing and learning from your mistakes. I think those are important, valuable life lessons. And you can get so many different things about cultivation.
Yeah, spot on. You said it right there. It's just like the physical, the reward of being in the garden, moving your body, interacting with plants, learning from your mistakes. And people, in the age of social media, pretend like they're perfect and only put their best face online. And you assume that they don't make the mistakes. And it's like, well, they've made those mistakes for years and years and learned from them to be able to get to the point to show you these, pretty pictures.
Right.
But I think it's very important to acknowledge your mistakes and, be humble and learn from your mistakes and be honest about,
be honest to yourself.
Yeah. Be honest.
Be honest to yourself. And, that's the best way. And I think you don't get good at something without making mistakes. It's just not how life works, and I think you can be naturally gifted and have a natural green thumb and get good results right from the beginning. But you can also be someone who's passionate, but stubborn and they don't give up and learn how to be a really good grower, if you're passionate about it, just because you don't get it right the first time, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try and try and try again until you get it perfect if you love it.
Yeah, and you see that a lot. Unfortunately, people spend a couple grand on a tent and it's for sale in 6 months because they bombed their first run. And it's like you put that in your notebook. What did you do wrong? Learn from that. Like
Yeah.
how do you build on that? Don't just one and done and quit and give up.
Well, yeah, and I see what happens a lot of times is, people, they get into it and they're like, they want to build a 6 lighter right out the gate and then spend all this money and invest all this energy into something they don't really know about. And the best thing they could have done is probably just got one light and put it in a room or in a closet and experimented with 1 or 2 or 5 plants instead of putting the room with 36 plants, because it's so much different. And these scale, as far as people don't think of 36 plants as a big scale, but compared to 1 plant or 2 plant, it's significant.
Yeah. It's
So, and the amount of time exponentially, and it takes for each one of those plants to properly care for it, and there's automated watering and there's some cool stuff, but like, I think people should learn how to water by hand. I think I would never do large scale by hand. And I've been a big proponent of automatic watering at scale. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with waking up in the morning and going watering your plants in your backyard. I've really got enjoyment over the period of my life from the plants where I've watered, right when the sun's coming up, I'll go hit my plants with water or whatever. And I feel like there's a lot to be learned from that too.
Definitely, 100%. And not only that, it's like the more you're interacting with your plants on a daily basis, you're going to catch issues before they become problems.
Right.
If you've got your automatic watering and you pop into the tent once a week to check the reservoir, where you could have spider mites that were in there, the last time, and now they're well established and a problem, instead of being in there every day and seeing some pest damage or pest pressure and being able to react immediately.
Totally. Yeah. I think being able to recognize problems early is great. And also, one of the beauties of automated watering that a lot of people don't realize is that it allows you to spend more time with your plants, so you can find those problems before they become issues.
Definitely. Yeah. I've been become a huge fan of the automated watering, at least in partial replacement of hand watering, because just, in my 4x8, I was having issues with pH fluctuations because I was getting dry pockets, and just the volume of soil, going from 20 or 30 gallon bags to 430 gallons of soil. Just that change was enough to throw a wrench in the system. And then adding the automated water to keep the soil moisture to a more consistent level changed overnight, improved things overnight.
So let's talk a little bit about how you grow, because I feel like that's an important part of the story too. You do no-till living soil.
I do. Yeah. And it's taken me a long time to get to this point. We started, just kind of shotgun planting seeds back in the river bottoms in the late 90s in Oklahoma. And it was, guerrilla style, go out and plant them, come back in October, maybe one of 20 plants would survive. And like going from that hands off to now everyday hands on and being involved as you want. And I kind of ran through the nutrients. I did, start off with Miracle Grow and Botanicare, Emerald Harvest, and ran through the gambit. And then that kind of started getting into the organic side. I smoked some organic flower, years ago, and kind of did a side by side, and was really intrigued by just the process. And then kind of started down that road, and it's led me to the no-till and trying to be close the loop as much as possible in my personal grow. So that led to some modern natural farming methods, and composting is huge. My little bug friends do a bunch of the work, and really trying to dive into the soil biology and just the life that exists under that mulch layer. And
Right.
That's where all the magic happens. So I really, really enjoy the process. You get that kind of the mad scientist in the lab with all the ferments, and you're doing a lot of the inputs, making that stuff yourself. Another something that's very rewarding is that you're handcrafting a lot of your inputs yourself. So that's another level of satisfaction that you're coming back to yourself.
Right.
And I enjoy the process. It does, takes a little longer. That's always the thing that people come at me with, the organic soil, and yeah, hydro's faster. I'm not going to argue against that.
Right.
It is, but it's apples and oranges situation.
It is. It's very apples and oranges. That's a great way to put it.
So, it's a tool. I think there's a lot of people that want to have, this black and white, definitive, this is the best, you got to do it this way, or you're, doing it wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
well, there's 1,000 different ways to grow, and none of them are wrong or incorrect or bad. There are tools that can be applied in certain situations that they work best in the situation.
Right.
And if you're, depending on what your goals, your personal experience and preference are, is going to kind of lead you and draw you more towards one style of growing or another. We got a buddy that's a plumber, and he's not ever going to quit growing hydroponically because he's a plumber and he loves it. He gets to go and tinker and build manifolds and do the pumps, and
Sure.
it's just like that's his deal.
It's so individual,
It is.
the whole thing. And there's so many different things on every level, whether it's lighting or genetics, and it's all subjective to personal preference.
Yeah, and I think that's what people don't understand and it's all subjective.
Yeah.
Best is just like
What the best is, it's like saying a Picasso is better than a Monet.
Yeah.
And really the sky's the limit. But then you start talking about organic living soil, like no-till living soil, or even just soil,
Mhm.
as opposed to cocoa, as opposed to, rock wool or different substrates. I think when you start diving into that, then you start looking at things like effect, right? That's the one big thing that stands out the most for no-till living soil. I think you can get pretty good flavor out of cocoa, really good flavor.
Mhm.
Ash, white, good flavor, oil ring, all that good stuff. And it's a great product. It's a great commercial product. But then as you start getting into some of the boutique stuff, the thing that stands out the most is the effect of living soil smoke,
Mhm.
where I feel like it has the best effect for me. And if you go side by side comparisons, which I've done many times, I feel like the effect on the living soil, it has a better effect. And if you like smoking a lot and you like the effect of it, that's important.
Yeah, and even without the higher THC numbers, a lot of the times,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't hit the high numbers in my living soil that I do, but I feel like all of the other cannabinoids that are coming into play are balancing that out and making it that full spectrum effect and that
Right.
the entourage effect.
What kind of numbers are you hitting roughly?
Mid 20s, low
Yeah.
to mid 20s with just water, and, not pushing anything, not doing too much supplemental feeding at all. I had a nitrogen deficiency, not because there was a lack of nitrogen in the soil, but when the woody mulch starts to break down, the bacteria tie up the nitrogen. So I had to feed some fish amino acids and fish hydrosylate off and on to bump the nitrogen up to acceptable levels. But once the mulch breaks down and starts cycling properly, it's basically water only. It really is. And you can add the beneficials and do compost teas, worm teas, and add stuff to it. But and that's another conversation about diminishing returns. It's like, well, you have this living soil, this 430 gallons of soil that's like a self-contained ecosystem, and really all the work that you've done for the last few months, 6 months, a year, jumpstarting that to life is so you can step back and really let it do its own thing, and only have to add water and make sure that soil moisture stays in an appropriate range, so the nutrient cycle, and then it's all up to the plant, and that's going to be kind of the heart of the class I'm putting together here on I hate to say it, we call it a master class, no-till master class, and it's basically geared towards people who want to transition away from synthetic or bottle feeding, even bottle feeding organics, but transition from that to a more no-till, hands-off
Just don't give
approach.
master grower certificates out at your master class.
I was not a fan of the name, but that's
The
what we're
master
going with,
master
yeah.
class I'm okay with, but I feel like the master grower, it's just such a generic thing.
Yeah.
And seeing it on resumes when I was going through those processes, it's like it just
Who
tells a
told you that?
lot.
Who told you were a master
Yeah.
grower? It's like, who gave you that
Yeah,
certificate?
it's one of those interesting things. So let's walk through your process so do you do tests? You send your soil out for testing? Do you have a microscope? How are you doing tests? And then as far as identifying issues like nitrogen deficiency, how are you doing that?
Yep. So I mix my own soil and send in for soil tests after every harvest. So see if I need to catch up on anything, add dry amendments, and I don't have a scope yet. I'm kind of playing with the microbiology scope. There's a couple of companies that offer testing kits as far as
Right.
what bacterial fungal levels your soil is at. And
So do you test in one zone, multiple zones? How do you?
yeah, multiple. So in my 4x8 bed, I'll take 6 samples, basically 6 different samples, at all about the same depth. So a 6-inch core sample, taking the entire core and 2 pounds of soil tested out. So it's a pretty good average.
Right.
It gets a pretty good cross section of everything in the soil.
Nice.
And since I mixed it myself, I know it's pretty even mix. It's not going to have too many hot spots. And when I add amendments, it's very consistent and evenly spread. So there shouldn't be, hot spot
So
pockets.
you built your soil from scratch.
Yes.
Some people use build a soil. Some people use Vital as a starting point, and then build on top of those soils. But
those are great. That's where I started Coots Mix. That was my kind of 101. And I don't think that you should just dive right into it and make your own recipe. There's tried and true recipes that are great for your first bed. Build a small bed, use someone else's recipe. Don't try to reinvent the wheel right off. And then in your situation, you can decide after a harvest or two, like, okay, well, I'm going to bump this, add this, change this, more aeration, more compost, and then start making those decisions. But people come in and be like, well, I'm going to add 6 extra cups of blood meal to bump the nitrogen. And it's like, well, you got horrible pH issues. You having, nitrogen, clawed plants in the first 2 runs because the soil's too hot. And there are definitely lots of room to play and adjust and make your own recipe. But just like with anything else, you don't just assume that you're going to understand soil biology better than the people that have been doing it for 30 years and come in and totally do it differently. They're not set in stone. And the Coots Mix has got a lot of controversy the last few years, but it was a good starting point. That it was kind of the first soil recipe that people could just grab off the internet and then kind of start on their own doing it. And before, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of people mixing their own batches and doing like 8 or 10 batches next to each other and trying to decide what worked better in their environment and situation.
Right.
So I do, and that's like mixing the soil. I try to source local inputs as much as possible.
That's awesome.
When
you have good inputs, you're up in Lincoln City.
I got nice picking there. Yeah. I got the coast is right there, so I can harvest seaweed and do the bull kelp, oyster shells, and seawater for minerals. And the forest is bountiful harvesting as well for lots of ferments and inputs. Horsetail, and I just filled up a barrel of horsetail for silica for nettles, blackberries. I got a nice spread to forage through. So
the blackberries are popping this time of year.
They're out of control, and they're an invasive species. So as many as you can cut back, the better. And
that's what I've heard. Yeah.
This time of year, especially, it's great for ferments or putrefaction for JDAM because you have all different aspects of the plant. You got fresh growth, immature flowers, and ripe fruit. So you get a nice broad spectrum fertilizer right there growing wildfire. Yeah.
But this year now you guys got to worry about fire danger. So I've heard you probably don't. On the coast, it's not as bad, but
it is not as bad. And we moved to Lincoln City 8 years ago now. And the wildfire was not, we're in the temperate rainforest on the coast. Totally. So we don't have to worry about wildfires. And we almost lost our home 2 years ago. A fire, we burned the well house and had some smoke damage, but our neighbors up the hill, a few hundred yards away was the fire line basically. And some of our neighbors were not so lucky, still recovering. And it's definitely something that everyone's having to have a conversation about, unfortunately now. So we have our fire plan and, you were there recently. It's one road in, one road out. It's not a great place to have to evacuate from.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a trip, and then even Hawaii, they had one of the worst in history in our lifetime.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering about my trip down here. This was, I don't know when the show aired, but that was tropical storm threats and hurricane possibilities yesterday.
It's so strange.
Day before.
So driving from Oregon yesterday, there was smoke in Oregon. I was driving through Eugene. It looked apocalyptic. Oh. Where you can't, the bright red sun, and you can't see more than like 200, 300 feet, like clear, and it's all just worse than LA, surprisingly.
Yeah, we call that the PTSD orange now, that smoky orange tent, and you're just in that
and even mode with the recycling air on your car where it's recirculating.
Oh, yeah.
I could still smell the
smoke. Couldn't keep it out.
It's no good. But then we get into California, and it's torrential downpour. And, the roads are greasy because we haven't had any rain. So, you don't want to drive too fast on those. Yeah. And, there was flooding in LA. They had an earthquake. Pretty wild. Wild times, man. Yeah. So let's talk about Autoflowers because you won an Autoflower Cup a while back.
2021, yeah.
Yeah, which is great. And, I love having people on the show talking about Autoflowers because I think Autoflowers are amazing. And so did you grow in soil, or
I
tell us the
did,
story?
yeah, no. So it was kind of serendipitous. Actually, I had got and ordered a pack of photo period seeds and got a couple of packs of autoflowers as freebies. And the last time I had grown an autoflower was back in the like the lowrider era. So I wasn't like super impressed with the lowrider and
I
kind of
hated autoflower back then.
talking
Yeah.
too much noise. But yeah, so times have changed
Yeah.
for sure. And so that was a great experience. Had a nice big plant, beautiful flower, smoked great,
Chunky
big
buds.
chunky buds.
Yeah.
It was really nice, but it was like I said, it was just kind of an offhanded freebie and turned out beautifully. And then it's like I just had joined Instagram at that point in my life, and
Yeah.
so there was come across the Autoflower Cup up in Washington State. It's like, man, I was into autoflowers. I was kind of trying to find my entry back into the world of cannabis, and thought, same autoflowers are great. They've got a very a big application, I think, here in the near future. They're up and coming,
Yeah.
and I could kind of see that then, and wanted to be involved in the community and meet some people. So I was like, I'll enter this cup, and no expectations really of winning it. So it was the first autoflower I had grown since a lowrider. So 8 years or so. And it entered a couple 2 or 3 weeks before the cup, and was excited to go and meet people, and it just kind of worked out, and I won for the flower, and got to meet some just amazing people, and had a great experience, and been like it was kind of my welcome back into the world of cannabis after being
Nice.
a
I
while.
love Washington. I love Washington State. I was born in Oregon. I was born in Portland,
Oh, nice.
but I love Washington State. I love Seattle. I have good friends, people I consider family up there. A lot of them.
Yeah, I love
Um,
Washington. It's gorgeous. It was out on the canal, and just
nice.
picturesque, gorgeous setting.
Yeah, I found some interesting flower at some of the dispensaries up there too, and
Nice.
I was looking for the Jaeger,
Oh yeah,
so Jaeger flower just to smoke. So yeah, I'm it's a good strain.
it is. Yeah.
Good variety and very popular in Oregon. It's more popular in Oregon. The other thing I was still looking for the Trinity. My buddy Bob from Eugene, I used to call him Eugene Bob. He went to Cannabis Cups and brought some Trinity one time. We'd had it back in the day, and that's a good one. The four way, the Trinity, the snow, and the corn. I think there was one other one, but we got all those. The dog, we got those from
Oh,
Eugene.
nice. Yeah.
All good stuff. Yeah, Oregon's always had good bud.
Yeah, it was Northern California, Emerald Triangle, Oregon, Southern Oregon. There's
Best
kind
growing
of
conditions in the world.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and that was one of the we were living out in Rhode Island at the time, and talking about where we were going to move. And my wife finished her residency, and I talked her into Oregon, and that was the weather, the climate. She found a job that she liked, and kind of all the stars aligned, and the rec market was open at that point. So I was going to go and grow for OLCC.
Yeah.
And I love the place. Yeah, I love Lincoln City. It's definitely become our home for sure.
It's chill. It's chill for sure. It's got a nice vibe to it.
Yeah, it's a little beach town.
It's a little beach town. There's the hippie side, which I like. Tie dye. They have a good tie dye shop.
Yeah.
Shout out to the people with the tie dye shop.
Yeah.
So but yeah, a lot of fun, and I think there's really good food there. There's diversity.
Yeah, it's a nice mix. There was 20 years ago, because of the mild climate, it was a big draw for retirees, and then that kind of a uh, whole market kind of came up around that. But now it's kind of the people moving from Portland and Salem out of the cities down there brought some nice amenities to town, where it's
Yeah.
usually closed down at 7 o'clock. I don't know if it was
Oh
open
yeah.
past seven. It was like 7 o'clock, lights out
So there's
across
only
town.
when we took the Uber, because I didn't want to, if we have some wine or whatever, I like wine. We went to the Bay House at Salishan. We were going there for dinner, and I was gonna have some wine, so I don't drink and drive. That's my one big thing, and I don't drink very much anyway. So I definitely don't drink and drive. So I was like, well, they got Uber, so we got an Uber. It took like 10 minutes for them to get there. That's not a big deal. But we get in the Uber, and the guy's like, well, there's only 2 Uber drivers in the whole Lincoln City.
Yeah.
Turns out there was actually 3, because we got picked up by the third one, but it was only his second pickup and drop off.
We just got Uber.
Yeah.
We just brand new to Lincoln City. So
Yeah, it's like a year old or something like that. Yeah.
It's funny that the taxi, love you Taxi 101 if you need a ride sometime, but
Yeah.
the taxi, it would be like an hour after you called, they'd show up with 4 other people in the car and be like, we got to make 5 stops before we drop you off.
Right.
It's like,
That's great.
it's like, come on, Uber, when are you
Yeah.
going to get here? Yeah.
Well, so as far as autoflower advice, if somebody's going to grow autoflower for the first time, because I feel like there's a lot of skeptical people that are like, oh, autoflower sucks. I I think the autoflower is special and it's unique. And I think it's maybe not for everybody, but like for the people that are interested in growing autoflower, it finishes from seed 70 days, 80 days, 90 days, depending on the variety.
Yeah.
So there is that beauty where it's predictable on when you're going to harvest. What advice or tips do you have for people that are interested in getting into autoflowers?
Man, I think the biggest thing for autoflowers is less is more.
Yeah.
Like people want to like drown them and feed them and burn them up in that first 2 weeks, and the first 3 weeks of an autoflower is super critical.
It's
in
the
their
most
development.
important part, I think, is
Super
the first
critical.
3 weeks, because if you fuck up in the first 3 weeks, you're not going to get a big plant.
And
That's the one,
And I think that is the biggest issue that people have is in that first 3 weeks, they're doing too much.
Yeah.
They don't understand that autoflower is a very light feeder, light drinker. It's easy.
When they have a small root zone compared to a photoperiod plant of the same size.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think right, less is more. And I also think everyone should grow an autoflower.
Yeah.
It's an awesome, if you've only grown photos, if like myself, had a bad experience years ago with an autoflower, they've come so far. I think everyone should try it out because like you say, you plant a seed and 80 to 90 days later it's harvest. And I've just vegged for 90 days, you know what I mean? In my photo period. So it's a nice turnaround. And I think that once people start to see the versatility and the utility, and it's like I have primarily grown from seed the last few years. So I'll start my photo period seeds and I'll start autoflower seeds along with them. And, 2.5 months later, when my photos are ready to go into flower, the autoflowers are ready to harvest.
Yeah.
So you get that, that little bumper crop in between for transition where you would otherwise.
Yeah. The bumper crop is cool.
Yeah.
For sure.
So even if you're not, like you said, if you're not getting pound plants,
it's
like it's taking up extra space in the veg room and you're getting a harvest that you wouldn't have had flower.
And you can still get 4-ounce plants.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like you're getting
minimal
small plants.
effort.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't get I had friends that I got better yield from my autoflower plants than they do from their photo period.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, 4 ounces on a plant indoor is pretty good. And 4 ounces outside, that's fantastic. And I mean, I think that's the higher end. But, I've seen some plants on the internet where I'm like, oh, that's got to be at least 200 grams.
Yeah, I see like close to those. Yeah, and the auto pots I think is the biggest ones I've seen. The self-watering, the bottom sub-irrigated planter setup.
Right.
Get some big autoflowers in those things for sure.
Bigger isn't always better. It doesn't mean it's going to smoke the same as a smaller plant, but each to their own. It's still a fun plant to grow.
Definitely. So side note, do you think that plant size affects the taste and flavor and quality? Because I've kind of been on that.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think having smaller buds as opposed to having monster colas is beneficial, but I also love looking at big, huge colas and arm size colas. But as far as like concentration of cannabinoids and terpenes, I think you're going to get from smaller colas. But it's also so specific to the cultivar and the genetics. A lot of that has to do with genetics. Is some plants are meant to be big and some plants are forced to be big. People force them to try to get them big and you don't get the same benefit. Blue Dream, Sour Diesel, those are naturally just big plants.
Big, yeah.
But like Sour Diesel, for instance, it's more airy. So you're not going to get, Blue Dream, the bigger it gets pretty dense. Mm. You can get some serious botrytis in there too. Whereas Sour Diesel, I feel like it's more airy. So it lets water in and water out. Some of those equatorials, the reason they're like that is so that they can allow humidity in and humidity to escape from the plant.
Yeah, it's 98% humidity and rains for 2 hours every day. You got to have some sort of way to dissipate that moisture.
Yeah, are there for a reason.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, I just having a conversation a couple of weeks ago about, like you said, a 10-pound plant. It's gorgeous. It's a thing of beauty. But I feel like too, like a pound plant tastes better than that 10-pound plant if they're cuttings the same or whatever. It's just side by side. I feel like the plant struggles to produce 10 pounds worth of cannabinoids where it can focus some more of its energy on a smaller plant and be more efficient in that production. And it's not.
But I think even within the zones of a plant, you can take a bud from the top of the plant under strong concentrated lights, and then you can take a side branch and you could smoke them, and you'll have, even if you smell them, the one on the side is going to smell stronger typically than the one on the top that's exposed to all the light. It's not always the case, but I think a lot of times, like, you'll get that difference, and it translates into the smoke too.
Yeah, no, I 100%. The best smelling bud I had in my last run was like up under the canopy in the shade, like a little airy little golf ball. Smelled just fantastic.
So when you see guys smelling the colas on Instagram, a lot of that, I mean, if you get the experienced guys, they're going to be smelling the side buds, the side colas. So It's just, and that's just, that's a personal preference thing, but I notice you get way more terps smell on the sides.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think like the proximity to the light and the intensity and the
Yeah.
heat up there a little bit.
So what kind of genetics are you working with up there?
Man, I've been all over the place. I'm kind of going back to play with some landrace stuff right now. Talking about just trying to get ahead a little bit. And I think, in Oregon especially, man, there's a few strains that just got so hyped and played out so fast, and everybody's tired of the same thing.
Like Jaeger?
No, I'm not Jaeger. Yeah, but it's like a lot of the cookies crosses and stuff, and then
sure. I mean, that's all over.
Bells
but we talked about the funneling, kind of how everything kind of goes towards one thing because people get so excited, and that's all the hype.
Yeah,
and they call it exotic, but yet that's all everybody has.
Yeah,
and everyone demands.
Yeah,
it's not rare.
And then that's the same thing as like that. When I think exotic, I think of that like 16 to 18 week flowering plant that nobody has. Because nobody's running 16 weeks. That's exotic, So trying to capture some of the qualities from those super long flowering plants, cross it back to something that's been worked better, shorter flowering period, and kind of having the best of both worlds, or at least
when you're doing some breeding too. A little bit. Seed production.
Breeding may be a stretch. I'm trying to educate myself enough to start down that road.
But you're making seeds.
I am making seeds, yeah.
So you're making seeds.
I'm making seeds.
Yeah. So you're a seed producer.
I'm a seed producer, baby, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Making seeds. I think that's great. And I think everybody should do it. Being a seed guy, I think everybody should have that experience so they understand the difficulties of it. It's like we talk about how to select for these certain things, and then how do you find out what traits get passed on. And really from experience from growing out the progeny, you really see what gets passed on by mother and father, donor or receiver, however you want to put that. But like that's the interesting fun stuff for me, is because you get these recessive traits that sometimes they don't pass on to the progeny. You get some gas and you breed it, and none of them have the kind of gas that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by the process and love seeing, like you said, what are you going to get? Like, what's this seed going to do? If there's not much better than popping new seeds. I love that just the anticipation, a couple months, and you start to see flower set and get some aroma coming off of it. And
right.
You're disappointed because it doesn't have that gas, or it's like, oh man, this is exactly what I was hoping.
Or it looks amazing in the plant, then you go to smoke it and you're like, oh man, it doesn't translate into the smoke.
Yeah. So it's just such a myriad of possibilities in that little tiny seed. So,
right.
And I want to, we're talking about, it's like, I have a plan, maybe one day in 3 years, I'll be comfortable to sell a seed, but I have, a goal. I have a plan to get to where I want to be. And then it's like, you go online and everybody's a breeder. You can throw a rock and hit 100 breeders on social media.
Well, anybody can make seeds. You can call yourself a breeder online, whatever you want, but like anybody can make seeds. It's the pheno hunting that is the hard part. Selecting new, pheno hunting is only used in cannabis. Like, we're doing selections for phenotypical expressions, or you're selecting for genotypes. But the thing is like, that's where the magic comes in. And you have to be able to grow the plant good enough for it to express, to be able to discern between the different plant expressions. So you're looking at different phenotypical expressions. And if you grow shitty, they're all going to look very much the same. And even when you smoke them, they're all probably going to taste the same and not that great. But the second you start becoming good at cultivating enough that's how you knew you're good at cultivating too. When you're popping seeds and this one's like this and this one's like that, and this one, it's completely different, or all these are the same and these are all pretty good, but this one smokes way better.
Yeah.
It's really, so cultivation is always the starting point for being a good breeder, for being a breeder that's making good seeds even.
And I think that's another benefit for the living soil is you're not feeding the plant. You're not steering it with your nutrient selection. You put it in this healthy environment, and it's going to do its own thing, and it's going to communicate to the soil what it needs when it needs it, and it's going to express itself kind of differently, I think, that it would in synthetic nutrients. It's allowed to show what it would do, in the wild, and that's when you see you see the really different expressions in the plant in the organic environment where they're allowed to do their own thing.
Yeah. What do you see of the future for Oregon? I think they've gone all around with allowing everybody to get a license, and then people struggling. Yeah.
So Oregon, we it was 2.5 years ago, we got our license right before the moratorium. They stopped taking applications for new license.
Yeah.
We had a 33-acre farm up in Tillamook County, and we're planning on, my sister moved up from Texas, my brother moved up from Arkansas, and we're going to do bootstrap it up and kind of slow build out.
Yeah.
And they OLCC made the rules such that previously it was like your caseworker basically for the OLCC calls you, is like, hey, you ready for a facility inspection? Or come by, make a list of things you need to fix, call me when it's done, come back in 2 months when you get all the problems resolved. The shifted from that to your caseworker calls you, okay, 30 days from now, we're coming for a site inspection. It's pass or fail. So for us to have been able to do that, we would have had to build out a facility, not knowing if or when we would get inspected for a license. So,
Wow.
talking $500,000 invested in a facility out there, not knowing if it would be eligible for a license ever. And we ended up having to sell the place. And it was a year and a half after we put our license application in that they contacted us to see if we were ready for our inspection. And by that point, we'd moved on. So I think that they early on with the big canopies and stuff, they made it very easy for whoever wanted one to have a license, and the overproduction kind of changed the direction of that. And now it's a struggle. And with the testing laws and regulation changes, it seems like they're putting pressure on the smaller farms and the organic growers. I don't know if you saw the aspergillus testing that they just implemented
No.
within the last couple of months. So, no studies, no data, no cases to, no reason to implement this testing law other than these companies coming into the state and lobbying for the laws to be changed because, this remediation company comes in and has a solution, but no problem. So they changed the law where now everybody's failing for aspergillus. And now what? I've
And
got a
aspergillus is
remediation.
pretty much everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's on everything. It's on everything, and it's everywhere, and it's never caused an issue. Like I said,
Got
there's
some
never been any.
aspergillus right here.
Yeah, exactly, 100%, and it's not causing any health issues, and has never been documented. From
Right.
smoking cannabis causing any health issues, but because this company came in and lobbied for the rule to change, because they had the solution to the problem that they created,
Yeah.
basically. So I don't know.
I
It's
don't know.
scary.
It's rough,
who
man.
It's just like, and that's kind of the what I've up and down. And when Oklahoma went online, we're originally from Oklahoma, so I had
Yeah.
friends and family building out, and I flew back and forth a couple of times early on in Oklahoma, and that kind of burnt me out again, and I just kind of stepped back away from it, and it's just such a rat race, and like it's a cutthroat deal in the commercial. I mean, I can't speak on it as well as you probably know personally and firsthand, but whenever I first started growing, it was like this super close knit group of people. It was like a community.
Right.
It was very hush hush. It was a very close knit group of friends and family that did this illegal thing together because
Right.
you couldn't talk about it and post pictures on it. And now it's like the industry, right? It shifted from the community to the industry. And now, understandably so, because it's a multi-billion-dollar business,
Yeah.
people aren't friendly to each other on the commercial side of things, and
Yeah,
you
I
see that
agree to a
animosity.
degree. And I think that we need some more of that. The passionate people need to just stick together and quit trying to bash each other and troll each other online. It's silly because we're in this together. And the more of us that are still here doing it, the better. As
100%.
far as like you want to see quality cannabis, don't get rid of the little guys. And, we should all be joining forces and not separating. We should get together. I think that's the big thing.
100%. And I'm starting trying to start a nonprofit up to hire a lobbyist on the national level to promote and go to bat for home growers because
Yeah.
we have nobody. And like you said, and you go online and it's horrible. Social media, you go on and everybody just constantly talking bad about other people's grow.
Right.
And honestly, like the last 3-4 years, I haven't seen a picture of a bad looking bud online. Like,
No,
everybody's
you
growing
just don't
good
see
weed,
them.
and
And
everybody's
now the
like,
cameras are so good. You see every little mite, every little bit of powdery mildew, all those things if you look at pictures, And so
Yeah.
like people are really aware of it, but then, we've got filters for all the cameras too, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah. But you have that everybody's bashing each other. And it's like, especially
Right.
like it's especially absurd in the home grower. Like we're not competing against each other. Like we
No.
should be banding together to ensure that we have the rights to continue growing at home
In a
legally.
future, yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that is kind of where my energy and focus is going. And like now moving forward is to provide a community instead of an industry, provide that community for home growers to come together and all band together to fight for our rights as home growers and ensure that we're able to continue doing that in the future.
Right.
10 years ago, everybody's like, oh man, that's so awesome. You're doing such great. Like, can I see,
Yeah.
sharing information and patting each other on the back. And yeah, it's just that social media toxicity where you got to be better than everyone, or,
Right.
whatever ego you need to stroke to
Yeah.
talk
A
bad
lot of
about
it's
someone.
ego. Ego is just, yeah, the ego needs to go with a lot of people and they don't even know it. Now that I'm older, I recognize it even more. In my 20s, I had way bigger of an ego and I thought I was way cooler than I was. Realized I'm not that cool. I'm just a dude. But I think as you get older, as you start losing friends, as you start experiencing life more, I mean, I think the years go by faster for one thing. So as you're alive longer, it's more relative. I talk about data points all the time. Living life is the best way to collect data points because you're going through life, and the more data points you have, the more you understand things. And living life and going through life, you really start picking up those experiences and seeing what's real and what's not real, what really matters and what really doesn't matter. Are you really passionate about quality, or are you really passionate about quantity? Like
Yeah.
those kind of things. And without home growers, though, there's not going to be the same level of quality because I feel like those guys are the passionate ones. They're the majority of the people that watch my show too, I think. And super passionate people. We get people that are in the industry too, but the home growers, like that's something special.
It is, and it is so like, just rejuvenating. Like seeing somebody grow for the first time legally. Like there's so much joy and passion coming out. And like you said, I've been doing it for a while, and I lose some of that childlike wonder. And it gotta like it's nice to see somebody so excited about it, and it kind of rekindles that fire in me. That there's still people out there that are doing it for the first time, and it's like this is all new, and they want to soak up all the knowledge they can and do it as to the best of their ability. And I think that's just fantastic because yeah, you get so cynical.
Right.
I've been cut backstabbed a couple times on deals, and you lose faith in humanity, and it's a grind, and you're growing as becomes a chore. And you got to remember this is still new for some people, and they're still got that the passion and fire to get out and
Oh, that's the best.
yeah,
Yeah, in the beginning, that passion and that drive, and it's like that's one of the reasons you're on the show because I saw the passion. You're like, you got the real fucking passion for the plant,
do
and
it, and I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like it gets overlooked a lot of the times, but people that have been around it a while can appreciate it. And I thank you for having me again. It's awesome.
yeah. No, it's a lot of fun, and it's like it's all about the diversity on the show and being able to see different perspectives and to be able to capture all this stuff on film and great stories. And it's like you're in the industry at this point, but 5 or 10 years, it's going to be great to look back and see these conversations that we had and see where the industry ended up because
Definitely.
it's definitely not going to be in the same place. The one thing for sure is it's not going to be in the same spot. It's like we evolve and we change, and no matter what, the only thing constant really is change.
Definitely. Well, yeah, it's scary 10 years, federal
It's
legalization and
it's scary and
descheduling
beautiful all
and
at the same time. I don't
yeah,
want to see people going to prison for cannabis. I don't
absolutely.
think that people belong in prison for a plant.
No.
And I think that we've come a long ways, but we still got a long ways to go. I saw this coming over 20 years ago. Saw legalization happening in my lifetime. I had no idea it was going to look like this. I had no idea I'd be sitting here talking to you, but I knew that it was going to happen in my lifetime. And it's still not fully happened though. We're still not all the way there. We're not at the finish line.
No, no, and that's the thing is like gotta remember this is like an industry that's in infancy. It's just starting up, and there's a lot of directions it could go at this point.
Totally. We could go back to no legalization and totally black market. We could, and then everything in between.
Yeah, I tell people I'd like to be able to sell 15 pounds a year, farmers markets, a couple zips online here illegally.
Yeah.
That's where I would like to see it go, and be able to have the farmers market
I
table set
agree.
up.
I would love the vertical integration model and the terroir for the guys. I talked about this on my last podcast too, but like terroir with the outdoor farmers and it's vertically integrated. So you go to the farm, you can smoke the weed that they grew there. If you go to the right part of the year, you can watch them harvesting the plants,
Definitely.
set up bed and breakfast everywhere, whatever they want to do. But I feel like going back to that boutique model is great too. I feel like that's another great direction that the industry should be going in. I mean, commercial cultivation, it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. Genetics on a scale or on a commercial scale, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also like the boutique aspect of it. I'm a big fan of micro brews. I don't really drink beer anymore as much, but I do like the microbrewery model where there's all these microbreweries all over Oregon, for example. Like there was more microbreweries there than anywhere else per capita in the world.
And I think I like that analogy. I think that's something that people can really relate to, wrap their heads around. It's like there's always going to be the market for the cheap beer. You get a big case for $10, and then there's going to be the $500 bottle of scotch, and there's
Right.
going to be the market for those.
Well, and I also look at it from the perspective of someone that's young that becomes very passionate about smoking weed when they're 14, like I was. Being able to acquire $1 billion company or $100 million or even a $10 million company, that's a lot further away than being able to open up my own custom, my own dispensary or my own shop that's vertically integrated where we grow the weed on site and it's just, a mom and pop type business. I think those are going to keep the passion alive in the industry. It's great to be able to see that, because I think that's when the passion for a lot of us, it started was when we were young. For me, it was 14.
Yeah. 16 myself. Yeah.
Yeah. High Times magazines back then. I still have my High Times magazines.
So we couldn't find, Tahlequah, Oklahoma is the town I grew up in. There was one record shop in town. They didn't have any explicit lyric albums there. You had to have an 18-year-old come into the store and order it for you.
Yeah.
So super conservative, religious, small rural town, Oklahoma. We didn't have High Times at the gas station. That was not an option.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like you go visit your cousin in Tulsa and they have a High Times magazine. It was like taboo.
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just seeing it and then kind of joking around too. So we had a lot of, brick, like literal brickweed in high school. So if somebody knew somebody or had an older brother or cousin, they had something that wasn't brickweed. It was called dro.
Oh, yeah.
Just because we associated hydroponic with hydro, it was like that was good weed,
Yeah.
So find some dro, and that was like $30 a gram or something, for a nug of dro, which was fine. It was worth it at that time. And then that mentality, seeing that bleed over into the Oklahoma medical market. I talked to a couple of people and they wanted me to come out and help build out a hydroponic facility, and I was like, well, I think you should really consider like organic soil, and it was because of that dro. That mentality from 20 years ago, the dro was good. That's what they wanted to grow.
Yeah.
So they built their hydroponic system out. And 6 months later, 2 harvests later, they were tearing it all out and going organic living soil just because of the demand for it. But kind of the holdovers from the before times when it was, illegal, and the mentality of people crossing over into the legal market. It's
changed a lot. And the thing is I think at one point, anybody could grow and make money. And now, like, you have to have the best quality. If you want to be successful in this industry now, you better strive for perfection, because all the big companies, they can grow middle grade, they can grow B+, A-, maybe even A grade. But if you grow that A+, if you're that 1% or better, and that applies to everything in life, but I think especially with flower, and if you want to be a cultivator, you better be a badass cultivator. It doesn't make sense to grow middle of the road stuff. Even in some of these emerging markets, you might get away with it for a little bit, but like Montana, you got Skunk VA over in Montana, and that dude's crushing some badass flower.
Yeah.
So, and all over, there's people all over that are really good cultivators. And before, where it used to be, and part of the reason it was illegal, but now with legalization and popularity and awareness, and also we have all these tools.
Yeah, no, like you said, 15 years ago, you could nasty looking flower was still going for a few grand a unit, and then no more. It better be pristine, gorgeous, check all the boxes.
There was outdoor pounds going for $100 last year. It's $300.
Yep.
It's like, and how do you make money as an outdoor farmer when you used to get $1,000 and now you get $100 at best? Sometimes for some of these people, it's like times have changed.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse.
Yeah, but like you said, they're changing. Not anything we can do to stop it. It's just try to anticipate what direction it's going and find a way to. Yeah.
Being able to pivot, have enough sense to make the right business decisions, to pivot when necessary, and know when and which way to go. And sticking to your roots, I think, is good too, though. Being able to stick to the roots, like what you believe in, not straying away from your beliefs.
Yeah, I think, and that's been huge for me as well. Just like the not trying to jump to the next trendy thing. I understand people need to play that game and have to, and they do their own thing, and no judgment. But I felt like it was, even though I had like a few hundred people follow me on the social media, and that was like it didn't matter. I was like able to communicate with these people and talk passionately about organic soil and living soil and how to kind of close the loop on your own personal garden.
Right.
And then, very fortunate the last couple of years, I've kind of met the right people, made the right connections, invited myself on awesome shows, and
Nice.
trying to, like I said, find my niche in the emerging market, and got my florofarm.com, and we're doing the living soil class. And I think that's kind of, I'm just going to embrace it and lean into that, the home grower education, and try to fight for the home grower's place in the world.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's awesome. And I think, passion is going to take you a lot of places. It's just the way it goes and everything. I mean, more passionate people are about the better products, the chefs that they love food and everything about food, the best chefs.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, it's really interesting. The whole evolution of cannabis and where it's going to go, and the home growers, and the home growers aren't going to go away. I think, maybe the guys doing it for money are going to go away to a degree.
Yeah.
But the people passionate about growing stuff in their house, just like people making beer in their house, that's people still do that.
Yeah, definitely. No, and it's like there's a lot of conversation about home growers getting pushed out because they the bigger production facilities don't want that competition. They want to have the market. It's like, well, there are a huge amount of people that aren't able to grow their own, don't want to grow their own. They want to go to the dispensary and pick up.
That's the vast
bag,
majority of them.
So like if everyone that wanted to grow at their home did, it's not going to take money off the plate in the long run for these companies, so I don't think there's a need to demonize the home growers for any reason. It's not going to make any kind of dent in anyone's portfolio. And I think that it's important, like you said, just for the culture, the quality, and sharing those genetics and the passion. Yeah, it's people are still passionate in the home grow situation, and they're new and exciting and trying to learn all the new stuff that they haven't been able to do. It's cool too. It's like I talked to a gentleman last week who the last plant he grew was in the early 90s in like outdoor in the Ozark Mountains, like way gorilla. So he's like, this is a night and day difference. Like LED lights indoors with
LED
humidity control.
LED changed the game, and I hated LEDs in the beginning, but then once they dialed the LEDs in, they're a big time game changer.
I think so. I was always HID lamps. I'm 2 years into the LEDs now, working with Grandmaster level up in Canada, and yeah, I have no complaints there. My only issue with them is I keep underestimating how intense and powerful the LEDs actually are.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of dial it back a bit. And,
par meters.
Just the learning curve with something new, a new technology is what it was.
But yields are definitely bigger. VPD and LED are the two big game changers, I think, in the last 12 years that have increased yields significantly.
Yeah, and going back to people that have a bad experience right off the bat because they treat it like something else. Like I was saying with the Autoflowers, it's like you come from HPS and you run your room the exact same way you did with the LEDs, the HPS. It's like, of course, your results are going to suffer. You're not getting the same weight you were with your HPS. It doesn't mean that the lights are bad or that the technology is bad. Right. It doesn't mean you're a bad grower. It means you need to learn something new, and you just need to say, I don't know. I need help. I need to learn. Somebody.
There's a learning curve to stuff.
That's all there is to it. And people are so proud. And I appreciate that, especially from a grower someone growing on scale. It's like, you have to be very confident in your ability, right? You gotta feel like you're doing the right thing and the best thing. But it's also like with that knowledge and experience comes the knowledge and experience to know that you need help. And
you can't be afraid to lose or make mistakes, because that's the best way. You can't let your ego tell you that you're going to do it right perfectly every time.
Ego. You said it. You mentioned it earlier. I think that's a huge thing. And
if you can take the ego out of most equations, you're going to do a lot better.
Solve so many problems. Yeah.
And not being afraid to fail in business, in life, in general. Like, take risks and believe in yourself, and believe that the next time you do it, even though you fucked up, you might even completely fail, and it's a learning experience.
Yeah, it's not a failure if you learn something from it. Yeah.
Right. In life, you just really never know what's what and what things mean, and if they're good or bad until the future, until everything kind of unfolds.
Yeah, hindsight. It's always easier to see how it is from a distance. Oh, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. So we've been working on these for about 6 months, using different papers, different tips, different flour grinds. Like the flour mill got me on the different flour grinds. Like,
Yeah.
so you grind it thick, real small, or you go coarse, it makes a difference. And somewhere in the middle is what I like. And then these organic tips, these are bamboo. They're disposable, but I feel like they're natural. They're pretty good. And then professional joint roller to Instagram, big shout out to him. He helped me with some of these, and then I've been working on them on my own, different papers. I like the raw, but I also like rice papers. We're not releasing these on the market anytime soon, but it is something that's going to be for sampling when we do our selection process. Every time we get bags of these, and I know what the plant looks like. I know what the plant smells like, but what does it taste like to you? Is this something you want to taste, or is this something you don't like? And it's really interesting doing the blind selection process, or the pheno hunting blind, where it's like, smoke this, smoke this, smoke this. Give me some feedback.
Yeah, it's so subjective. Like you were saying, it's like
Yeah.
probably every person that samples it has a different opinion or a different
They
experience
they
with it.
do, and some people like the effect, really, and I don't think a lot of people realize like they like the effect or the taste or whatever. Most people are just like, I like this or I don't like that. But what I like about this size is it doesn't burn too hot. This is 3.5 grams in here, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So it's a big joint, but it doesn't burn too hot when it's rolled this thick. I tried the wider ones, and those just burn a little bit too hot. You don't get the full terps. But if you can provide somebody with this, then they get the best experience possible. And really, at the end of the day, I want people to have the same experience that I have. So being able to share my flower or stuff I'm working on with them, I want them to have the same experience so they can judge it kind of the same way I would. And then
Definitely.
people that are connoisseurs out there that already roll joints, when they roll it, they're like, oh shit, that's a good one.
Nice.
So
Heck yeah. Yeah, well done. It's a fine looking specimen there.
yeah, they burn pretty even. You get some good stuff with white ash and an oil ring around it. You're looking good, but
What flower is this? Do you know, top of your head?
yeah. So this is the Zereo's Skittles Zerbert.
It's nice. I like it.
Yeah, got candy terps. And we got some Skittles S1s, and so I did a lot of stuff with Skittles because
Nice.
I really like the candy terps.
Yeah.
And it's interesting seeing what it gets passed on to, like in other things, structure wise, and the structure's heavily tied to the flavor profile. So if you want the stuff that's real skittly and you cross it to something that's very different, the ones that are going to taste real skittly are the ones that are going to be the most similar to the structure.
Nice. So do you start making calls early on based on that structure then? If you're just looking for that candy?
No, because every once in a while you get like some crazy, like I'm not pulling stuff that smells amazing. Like if it smells like Skittles and it grows like shit, I'm still gonna grow it out because Skittles looks like shit pretty much when you harvest it. It's small, like it's not the nicest looking. It's the most finicky plant. It looks good in the bag or whatever, but like I think that it's also very difficult to grow, and so like it might take you a couple rounds to actually grow it properly. So even if you're popping seeds, you should probably grow it out multiple times, if not for the sexual maturity factor, just for the fact that you might have to learn how to grow those specific plants,
Definitely.
better. So,
Definitely.
and then same thing with pheno hunts. When we're going through the first time, we might have a different one the second time that we think is the best, and the third time. But typically by the third time, we understand it, and we have our selection, and we're like, that's the one,
Nice.
or those are the three that we really like the best, and we keep those around, out of however many seeds we're popping. And
No, and that's one thing. It's like I have very rarely run something consecutively or multiple times or enough to become intimately familiar with it. Like I said,
see, that's the difference of the growers back in the day. We all used to grow the same thing over and over and over and over, 10 runs, 20 runs, and might only grow 2 cultivars.
Yeah.
But like what you do is you'll grow the same thing for just a couple runs and switch it up.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I like to been primarily growing from seed the last few years, and I just new seeds every round, starting something new every 2 months or so, and then that's kind of I forgot I was talking to you. It's like, do you call the early ones? And that's like something that kind of we're forced to do as home growers. Like I can't run 1,000 plants and keep 1,000 cuttings back to hold on to make those selections after the flower has been processed and smoked. So I got to like start making some decisions early on, and am I throwing away some potential keepers? Sure. Do I have the option? No. I got a small little basement grow, and a lot of people are confined to the plant count. You get 4 or 6 plant count, and
First and foremost, though, I select for the nose typically when I'm going through the rooms. Like
no,
even the
yeah,
shitty structure, my partner Jason Hutto up in Seattle, we've done a lot of pheno hunting or selections together. He definitely has an eye for the way the plant grows as opposed to the nose first, and then but me, I'm all about the nose first. And
nice.
sometimes I could be off, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and that's the other thing, like translating into from the smell on the plant to the smoke in the joint.
Mm.
So one thing smells amazing, and the other thing the other plant might not smell as strong, but then when you go to smoke it, it's like, ooh, that's the one.
And tastes
That
totally different than it
tastes totally
smelled.
different
Yeah.
than, or it just tastes louder.
Mhm.
Where sometimes they smell really good, and then it just doesn't translate into the smoke. So
Yeah, that's always disappointing. I hate that. I think you got the winner, and it just smokes like
I would say
garbage.
that the majority of stuff in the dispensaries does that for me. I go to look at it, or you see the samples. Like even in Oregon, some of the stuff that I checked out, it's like, fuck, it looks pretty fucking good. And you smell it, and it's like it smells pretty good. But then you smoke it, and it's like, ooh, like not necessarily cardboard terps all the time, but like
Yeah,
lack of flavor, or the initial hit tastes good, and then as you're burning it down, you kind of lose that.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's kind of like a byproduct of the commercialization. People are selecting for bag appeal or high numbers, and it's unfortunately, like you
So
said,
many people.
the nose is like the last thing selected for.
When
Like
it's
the
a lot
smoke
harder to
quality.
select for the flavor than it is for the look, right? The
Oh, for
look is
sure.
very obvious, and then the flavor and all those things are still somewhat subjective, right? Where the look, it's like if it's frosted, that's the one.
That's it.
I
Yeah,
want the Oreos.
yeah,
It's the Oreos looks frigging amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But as far as the smoke, it's my least favorite thing, pretty much, to smoke. I'd rather have the worst autoflower typically, but no,
yeah,
but no. Honestly, the Oreos is like all these things, because I'm not a huge fan of apple fritter, Oreos, purple punch, but they're all one step away from being good.
yep,
In one generation or one cross, it's like you can find something good in there. There's definitely good genetics in there. There's definitely things that desirable traits that can be passed on. So when's the next cup that you're going to do?
I missed a bunch of stuff going on this summer. So put the class together with Dr. Zimes. I've got
Oh,
a couple of
nice.
other projects going, and kind of dropped the ball on the Oregon Growers Cup this year. So next year, like probably a few months off, but there's probably hit a couple of next year.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got some interesting genetics for you to check out. I made
I'm
you
super excited
a little
about it. Yeah,
care package of stuff to try out, and so I think there'll be some winners in there. I got some unique. I try to breed for unique stuff with autoflowers. Yet you want the least amount of phenotypical variation for what I'm doing. If you're trying to grow a row crop, you definitely want something that comes out pretty even across the board.
definitely.
So,
And
yeah,
that's kind of like that's what I was saying earlier. I think that's kind of one of the applications I see in the near future for autoflowers. Like you still see it. You see it popping up now and again, but 100 acres of row crop,
oh yeah,
milled out
it's
or
almost hands down. It's the obvious choice if you're growing 100, 200, 300 acres for extract.
mhm.
It's just because they're so consistent. They're so predictable as opposed to photo period. And you got, greenhouse is okay, but autoflower, it's very easy, and it's grown like a row crop. You grow it like a tomato.
And you can pull a couple of harvests without any infrastructure,
Some
pulling
places you can
light
pull
depth and
3 harvests a
yeah,
year, maybe even 4 in some places. But typically, like to be able to, and the yields are really incredible too. So at scale, if you're talking about 1,500 pounds is normal, but
yeah,
some people just crush it.
yeah. It's not bad, and like no infrastructure for pulling tarp to light depth too.
But even 3,000 pounds, let's say you got 3,000 pounds, and you can do 3 pulls, the 9,000 pounds out of an acre.
Mhm.
That's pretty good. You can't do that with photo period. Not really.
No,
I've never seen it.
not three. Yeah, especially not
Not
without.
because you're getting three bumps a year like that.
Yeah, fucking baked.
Yeah. Yeah, so these do get you lit, but I feel like this has a ceiling. So as far as like we talk about the effect, I like the effect of this because it's not like overly powerful in the sense that I can smoke a big fucking joint of it,
Mm.
feel pretty good, and it has a ceiling. Whereas like you smoke some of these equatorial land races or equatorial crosses, even, any of the sativa stuff, these hazes where they don't have a ceiling, you just keep smoking, you get more high and more high. And sometimes you get more high and then it creeps up on you, you get even more high after that.
Yeah. I just had a bad experience with some hash last week. The too much, too panicky, kept going, didn't stop. Like you said, there was no ceiling. It just kept getting more and more
Like a
uncomfortable
dab.
with it. Yeah.
Like a
No,
good
no,
dab.
just hash. I did dab there for a little while, and I just, man, I don't know. I don't. It just doesn't do it for me. I like flower.
I
I
like
just
good
flower
rosin
smoker.
dabs, some good living, like the live resin
Oh, for sure.
rosin. I just love I like flavor. I chase flavor. I'm constantly looking for something new flavor wise.
Oh, yeah, I do. That's my favorite thing is I guess it's got a little 2-inch plate press, but to press flour and then
Yeah.
do the rosin and then just like drizzle it on a bowl. The
Nice.
same flour on
Same idea.
pressed on a bowl. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's my go-to for sure.
Right. Yeah, there's something special about rosin. I like rosin. I
Oh
like
yeah.
the effects from it too. Oh, one more thing. What about soil outdoor
hmm
versus living soil indoor? With
Ooh,
the same, what's your opinion
man,
on
that's a
that?
loaded question. So
It
the
is. There's a
sun,
lot
man,
to it.
the sun is special.
Right.
Indoor lighting has come a long way. It's great. I think I'm hooked up with best company out there. Personal experience anyway. It's the sun's the sun, and then you could take plant, cuttings from the same plant them on opposite sides of your property and have two different expressions in those plants just because of the soil chemistry in those two different locations.
Yeah.
So I think that outside in the earth, under the sun, is very special.
Right.
If you're able to do that, I think you should take advantage of it. And I pretty much committed to indoors. Because I can't get stuff to finish. If I pulled tarp or an autoflower finish outside, but full term photos on the coast, well, you saw how cool it gets at night there in Lincoln City. It's
Right.
like this time of year, it's down into the 40s and like 80% humidity already. So it's tough to get something to finish outdoors. Uh, but I have a few plants outside because they're special. It's
Yeah,
nice. I love outdoor plants in the earth.
for sure.
They just grow different. And if you have some place that you can really put some energy into the soil, you can do some awesome stuff
Yeah,
in the earth. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of mixed light too.
yeah.
Yeah, supplemental lighting in a greenhouse. I think you get a little bit of sun,
Best of
little
both worlds,
best of both
for
worlds. The
sure.
future of cannabis. I think a lot of the stuff is top shelf. You can grow really top shelf, amazing sticky bud.
Yeah,
You can do that on every level though, in all reality. I mean, I think there's sticky bud that can be grown in with every substrate
for
to a
sure.
degree.
Yeah. Like you said though, it's law changes and emissions and energy stuff coming down the pipeline. Like mixed lighting may be a realistic thing in the near future as far as like indoor commercial production,
Yeah.
especially in the cities and pushing
Oh
for the
yeah.
CO2 emissions. And I just read something ridiculous. That was one of the arguments against home growers is the CO2, the extra CO2 emissions,
Of course.
and it was like, like 138 pounds of CO2 to grow a pound of flour, dried flour produced like 138 pounds of CO2 for, well, I don't know what average they used or anything, but then like on the opposite side of that same coin, it's like an hour of a private jet creates 2 tons of CO2
Right.
and nobody's trying to stop those, but it's the home grower with
Oh
200
yeah.
watt light that is like the criminal and destroying the environment, which is,
Yeah, I mean,
silly.
there's so many people that try to manipulate data. It's just ridiculous, all over and everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you experienced cannabis in any other parts of the world, or pretty much just the U.S.?
Mexico. Yeah, I
Mexico.
haven't been able to go to Europe. That's definitely on the list. I'd love to go to Europe and have some traditional hash and go to the.
You got to go for
uh,
Spanibus.
Yeah,
Now that you're talking about, you're gonna go for Spanibus in March.
yeah,
Yeah, that's bring the family.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think Spain is an amazing place. The culture there is really great, and it's a big event where everybody from around the world we kind of get together. I have my same friends I've been friends with going to dinner for the last, on and off the last
That's
10
amazing.
years
That's
and
huge.
12,
Yeah,
more than that. Yeah, more than 10 years, and it's like and just great people from people from Australia, people from South America, people from South Africa. We got the Dutch guys over there, the Spanish guys, but
yeah,
but my friends from all over. Some of them I only see at that event.
that's cool.
So yeah, it's great seeing them and hanging out and seeing, what they're up to and talking about the genetics and because genetics are kind of popping different all over. I mean, I think gelato is pretty much everywhere. Gelato crosses.
Thailand blowing up.
Dude, Thailand. It's crazy. Thailand's like fully emerged now. And
that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Thailand one of these days.
Yeah.
So I haven't been there yet.
Well, I think Spain, that's an easy sell. My wife's been trying to get us over there for years now. So I think
it's so great too.
Not even mentioned Spanibus, but what a coincidence. We're here in March for Spanibus. We might have to check it out.
I'll get you a free pass. Come check it out. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And the food is great. Food in Spain is amazing. The food in Europe in general is really good, but especially Spain.
Yeah, it's definitely a start there somewhere and train around for a few weeks.
So if people are looking for you on the internet, you have a website, you have an Instagram. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so florofarm.com is coming up. That's where my my Living Soil Masterclass is all going to be funneled through there. I'm Instagram, Floro Farm, same handle all across all the socials, and my YouTube channel as well. So trying to spend a little more energy on the YouTube, producing some media content for the class and YouTube as well. So I'll be more involved there than Instagram. I think it's just so frustrating, like censored constantly and post removed and playing that social media nonsense game. So I'm kind of burnt out on that end and going to try to focus more on my website and the YouTube side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. We've really been focused on the YouTube. I mean, Instagram is still Instagram, but I really like YouTube, doing the videos, and I think that's been a lot of fun. And I got a great team. We got a great team of people here. So
definitely. Yeah. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me in and
they don't smoke during work, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great having you today, man. I really look forward to seeing you back here and doing this again sometime, and maybe hopefully seeing you in Spain for Spanibus. That'd be great.
Man, count on it.
I know all your wife's friends that are watching are going to tell your wife about this.
Oh yeah, all of them.
For sure.
Definitely.
Well, your wife's probably going to watch this show.
She better be watching it.
Yeah. She's going to watch this show and be like, hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah. It'll be too late. I'll buy the tickets before the show comes out.
Totally. Thank you again and have a great day.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.